This is Jennifer Gonzalez welcoming you to episode 221 of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about a simple photography project that helped teachers in one school see each other through a different lens. Something about teaching that we rarely talk about is how teachers are almost expected to suppress parts of their humanity in order to do their jobs. There's kind of an unspoken standard that being professional means you must bring a more neutral, more bland version of yourself to the classroom. While this could be said for all kinds of jobs, because teachers work with kids, there's a little extra pressure to be mindful of being a role model, to remember that you're there to serve, and to never forget that this work is about the kids, not you. And that's fine. It certainly isn't on the list of complaints that teachers have about their jobs. And no one gets into this profession to be some kind of a celebrity. But every now and then, I think it would be nice if teachers got more of a true spotlight, if they felt a little more seen as the full humans they are. This is what I was thinking when I saw a collection of portraits taken by Dan Tricarico, a high school English teacher in San Diego and author of 2 books for teachers, The Zen Teacher, Creating Focus, Simplicity, and Tranquility in the Classroom, and Sanctuaries, Self-Care for Stressed Out Teachers. Dan's specialty is mindfulness in a school context. So when he started taking photos around his school campus, it was done in an effort to pay closer attention and more deeply appreciate his surroundings. After a little while, though, his focus shifted to portraits of his colleagues, really stunning images that captured each teacher's personality in a way a yearbook picture never could. And as the project grew over time, and Dan shared the images on Instagram, the faculty at his school got more and more interested in them, seeing themselves and each other through a different, clearer lens than ever before. When I saw the photos, my first thought was every teacher should have a portrait of themselves like this. Every teacher should be given that moment of being seen and celebrated as a beautiful, unique individual, separate from the role they perform so tirelessly year after year in the classroom. In this episode, Dan joins me to talk about how the project got started, the impact it had on his colleagues, and specific tips that will guide anyone with a smartphone camera to do the same at their school. This last part, by the way, is what I'm really hoping will come out of this, that someone in every school will embark on a similar project so that every teacher can be celebrated. If you choose to take this on and you post the results online, add the hashtag #teacherportraits so we can see them. And to view the entire collection of Dan's portraits, come over to Cult of Pedagogy, go to the podcast page, and click on episode 221. Today's episode is sponsored by WeVideo, a leading interactive video platform used by millions of educators and students. For educators, WeVideo offers time-saving solutions like pre-made video projects, real-time feedback, and automatic grading. For students, WeVideo empowers voice and choice, helping them develop crucial critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity skills, all while using a medium they love. Try WeVideo today and discover how you can use interactive video to maximize student engagement, retention, and performance. Visit cultofpedagogy.com/WeVideo to learn more. Support also comes from the Modern Classrooms Project, which empowers educators to meet every student's needs. Created by educators for educators, the Modern Classrooms Project can help you create your own instructional videos, design structures to support self-paced learning, and ensure that each of your students achieves mastery. Join their free online course to learn the basics, or sign up for their virtual mentorship program, where their experts will prepare you to launch a modern classroom of your own. If you're ready to transform teaching, visit modernclassrooms.org to start learning now. And now here's my conversation with Dan Tricarico about his teacher portrait project. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. I've been following your work, and we've been sort of connected through Angela Watson for a little while,
Right.
and so it's really neat that we have this thing now that
Hmm.
a reason to have you on. So before we get into, we're going to be talking about teacher portraits that you took, but before we
Hmm.
start telling that whole story, can you just tell me a little bit about what you do in education? And then I'm also going to ask you about your books because you've got two books. But first, start off, tell us who are you in the education world?
Well, for the people who don't know me who are listening to your podcast, my name is Dan Tricarico, and I'm a high school English teacher in San Diego, California. I've been at my school, West Hills High School, for over 30 years now. And I just absolutely love the school. I love my job. I believe it or not, this is really a rare thing for teachers. I've been in the same classroom for all of those 30 years. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it's crazy. And it's like my home away from home. But as like in any profession, I think it was around 2014, I really started hitting some burnout, and things were getting kind of crazy in the education world. And I thought, holy cow, I have 10 years before I retire. What am I going to do? And I'm a writer. It's been my therapy, and so I started a blog called The Zen Teacher, just using old drama techniques because I was a drama major and an actor, of relaxation and mindfulness and meditation that just kind of calmed me down and grounded me. And I started writing about that in the blog, and then it resonated with teachers because I would put it out on what used to be called Twitter and different social media platforms. And then I was fortunate enough that that blog became a book, and that book became another book called a Sanctuary: Self-Care Secrets for Stressed Out Teachers. And the Zen Teacher became a book called The Zen Teacher: Creating Focus, Simplicity, and Tranquility in the Classroom. And the greatest thing in the world, Jennifer, is I've been able to help teachers reduce their stress and improve their self-care in the twilight of my career. And what's better than that?
Oh, that's fantastic. And we're gonna put links to both of those books
Thank you.
in the post that's gonna go with this episode. So, and kind of interestingly, you did kind of find a way to make what we're gonna talk about today sort of link into this idea of sort of mindfulness,
Hmm.
and so what we're gonna talk about is how you ended up taking individual, really beautiful portraits of your whole staff or almost your
Thank you.
whole staff at your
Almost.
school. And what got my attention was that you posted a couple of these online, and I thought every teacher should have the opportunity to have these kinds of portraits taken because it's such an unglamorous
Right.
profession.
Yes.
And they're not glamorous photos, but they're the kind of photos that you would see taken of celebrities that are getting a portrait session done, where these are just really kind of capturing the essence of who these people are. And you said that once you kind of got going on this, it really did have some sort of bonding effects of the staff. So we're going to
Hmm.
get into all of that.
Hmm.
But let's sort of start at the beginning. How did you end up beginning this project that turned into the teacher portraits?
Well, I've always loved photography, and it's something that used to be very expensive with film and developing and all of that kind of thing. And so I dabbled in it when I was younger, but digital photography and the phone cameras just changed all that, and it's just become so easy. And you can take a million pictures, and you can put them on Google Photos or wherever you want to put them, and then you can have all these images. In fact, sometimes too many. It's like,
Mm,
how do you organize all that?
mhm,
But the way this particular project started is I was reading a book on photography, and there was a reference to a woman named Kathy Ryan. And she's the director of photography for the New York Times Magazine. And she
mhm,
started an Instagram where she just one day picked up her cell phone, and started snapping artsy pictures of her office at the New York Times Magazine, and then started taking pictures of the people around her, like her colleagues. And I thought, wow, I can totally do that. And just at my campus, we're very blessed to have a very physically beautiful campus. So
mm.
taking beautiful images of the school was not difficult. And the magic is, and what I always think is amazing when people compliment these portraits is I just want to whisper to them, I just took them with my phone. I mean, it's just silly,
Yeah.
but it's the world we live in,
Mm,
and there are different features and modes and buttons that you can press that just turn out these beautiful photos. But I love what you said about how teachers deserve these portraits, and it's an unglamorous job, and to elevate them into this place where maybe they're a little bit like a work of art. That's
mm,
been one of the most fulfilling aspects of doing this. So to go back to the project, I just, the buildings were nice, and sunsets and sunrises and all of that. But eventually, I was a drama major and an actor, and I like people. I'm fascinated with people and why they
yeah.
do what they do. I think teaching has a lot to do with that as well. So I started asking the people at my school if I could take their portraits, because I knew I was putting them on a repurposed Instagram of my own. It was a personal Instagram. It was not school sanctioned. So I knew that, taking pictures of students would be out of the question. But then my colleagues, I said, well, I could take pictures of them. And then I just was stunned myself, and this has nothing to do with my skill, but just stunned with how well they were turning out.
Mm,
And I remember one specific portrait of one of our English teachers, which is the department I'm in. I just looked at it after I'd done I do a little bit of editing afterwards, but I looked at it and I thought, holy cow, that does kind of look like something I might have seen in a magazine or an
mm.
art gallery, and I thought, oh, there might be something to this. I might be onto something here. And then, as you said, the project, it's the word kind of started to spread, and it got a little traction. People were not surprised when I came up to ask them if I could take their portrait. At first, I was explaining, the whole connection to the Kathy Ryan project, and but eventually, all I had to do was say, "Can I take your portrait?" And they knew what I was talking about.
So, you said at first there were some people who were kind of like, oh, why?
Yes,
Yeah, they kind of resisted. So,
sure.
how did, what would you say to them? Did you change anybody's mind? I mean, it sounds like you did.
Sometimes I think there were a couple people who, and it's just the irony of the fact that a couple of the people who said no were a couple of my favorite people on campus. But you want to respect those
Mm,
wishes, and they don't take their picture. I mean, like, they duck out of staff pictures, they duck out of
mm,
holiday pictures. They just don't want their picture taken, and that's okay. You have to respect that. There were some people who were shy. One thing I will tell you that amazed me is every single person, I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think it was
hmm.
pretty much every single person started our sessions by saying, well, you should probably know I'm not very photogenic. And then when
Which
you
is
look at these
exactly how
pictures,
I
you're like,
feel
what are you
too.
talking about? But that's the internal monologue that I think a lot of us have. I don't like looking at pictures of myself either.
Yeah, but then you would say something to them about that.
Well,
You
I tried to. One thing I said to them was, it's your job to be comfortable. It's my job to make you look good.
Yeah.
And I think that put a lot of them at ease. And I think partly, when you work at a place for over 3 decades, you're a fixture and people are comfortable with you. So I think I had that
Mm,
going for me too. They were very at ease with me. I don't, they all, get along with me and like me, hopefully. So, I think that that helped.
yeah, yeah.
And then we just had fun. I knew if I had fun, they would have fun.
Did you do anything like I noticed in some of these photos, you really did get some like a little bit more silliness out of some of them,
Mhm.
and some of them
Mhm.
kind of almost like a sense of kind of bravado with some of them. They seem to really
Mhm.
come into it. Did you say anything to get them to do that or
There were a couple approaches. One, and I'm just thinking of this now as a way to articulate this. You develop a sense, you develop an intuition. You just have your finger on that little iPhone button, and what you're making me think of is I I in those cases where it was silly or the bravado, is I
Mm.
took the picture between the pictures. And what I mean by
Mhm.
that is, instead of just the pose, I was snapping whatever they were doing.
That's
And
it.
then, because again, you have a million pictures, so I can go back and pick the ones that really worked for some reason. It doesn't just have to be. I don't know if this is a regional thing, but do you know the old Olin Mills photography studio or
Oh, I think
Sears,
that's an
you
age
know?
thing, Dan.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
and
oh,
I
it's an
do
age
know
thing. Yeah,
them. Yes,
yeah,
and I'm
I
very
totally get
familiar
that.
with those Olin Mills, J.C.
Yeah.
Penney, like,
Right,
yes, portrait
exactly.
studio.
Yeah,
Yep.
just the photo studio thing. Sure, I got some of those, but I didn't want that. I wanted
Mm-mm.
as I'm thinking to say it now, the photo between the photos. And those
Yes.
are some of my favorites because, like you said, that's when it captures them. You have to have a little bit of an intuitive sense of, okay, then to, hit that,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other piece is, I don't know if I read this someplace or if I just thought of it. I probably heard it on some YouTube video or something. Is that when you ask them to pose, don't just ask them to pose. Tell a story. Like saying,
Mm.
don't just say smile. Say smile like you have a secret. Or a lot of a lot of what I do, and it's for both men and women, but for some reason I think it just really resonates with the women more. I say, give me that Mona Lisa smile. And they all know
Mm.
exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm.
And it's just this very mysterious kind of half smile. And it just really works. And then it's in their head, it's whatever that means to them. But then I get something that's not just the J.C. Penney Olin Mills,
Yes. Yep. That
portrait.
that's that sounds perfect. My mother used to always tell me, she would say, Jennifer, every time I snap the picture of you, as soon as I stop, that's when I see your actual real smile. And I'm
Yes.
like, I know. If
And
somebody
that's when you
picks up
need
a
to snap
camera, then
the,
I don't know what to do. Yeah.
that's when you need to snap it.
Yeah. So you did this, you did outdoor shots,
Yeah.
then you created a black backdrop in one of the classrooms, was it? Where you
Yes.
started to do more indoor portraits?
Well, yeah, I really do both because what I realized is that people are, it's our campus, they work there, so they're comfortable outside. So we would start outside and just take some
Mhm.
natural light portraits. But then I thought, well, I'm trying to practice too, and I love photography. I'm trying to get better. I just on Amazon bought a super cheap black backdrop, put it up in my classroom on the empty wall, which kind of, freaked out my students. They're like, "Hey, Mr. T, what's that for?"
Yeah.
And then so I would ask people to come in after we would be outside, and a lot of times I didn't want to bother anybody, I didn't want to interfere with the school's
Mhm.
functioning or anything like that, so it would be before school or after school, that they would come in, and then by the time we walked into the classroom, they were more comfortable and at ease. I just think it was easier starting outside. I just think
Mm.
it made them more relaxed.
Yeah, helps to be in San Diego too, where it's
It
always
doesn't
beautiful
hurt.
outside, right?
Yeah.
So, in this post where you're writing about the project, you talked about some of the personal benefits that you
Yes.
sort of discovered along the way from this project. So, what were those?
Well, like you said, one of the things that, and one of the reasons I started it is because I realized that photography is an incredibly mindful activity,
Mm.
and that definitely ties into the platforms of the Zen teacher and sanctuaries, and
Mhm.
this path that I've been on for the last 8 or 9 years, where I'm trying to just be grounded, kind of being, in tune with what I'm doing as a teacher, and not so anxious or stressed about all of the bureaucracy and the red tape and the politics and all the craziness that's going on in education right now. And it's really grounded me because I go on campus every day and I'm looking for the shot, and I just have my phone in my pocket. And so I'm looking at light and I'm looking at colors and I'm looking at patterns, and it just puts me right in the moment. And it's so soothing and so comforting, and it just grounds me. And then the kind of ironic benefit to that is then it makes me so much more ready to start the day. And also, if I'm taking a walk to the office and I see something, it's not intrusive to my job or the school to just take out my phone and snap a picture. But then the funny thing now is my staff sees me and they're like, "Oh, there he goes again, taking the pictures."
Yeah.
But it's fun, and so mindfulness really was an unexpected kind of gift, of doing
Right.
that. And then, I just the other piece is I'm pretty close to retirement, a couple more years, and I thought, I'm going to look back, and I was at this place for a large part of my life, and
Mm.
I'm I want to remember what it was like to be there. And
Yeah.
so these photos, I'll have them, you know,
Yeah.
as long as Instagram's around anyway,
Right, right. Yeah, and you're also providing that for all of the other people who are on that campus as well, who would not have
Yeah.
had them, and so it's yeah.
And there are current, I don't advertise it or promote it really, but there are current students who have found it and former students who have found it. And they all love seeing the school they used to go to and the school that they're currently going to. And again, they see it through different eyes and maybe in a little more artsy, creative way, which is kind of
Yeah.
nice.
I mean, I've looked at the photos, and the two that are standing out to me right now as favorites. There's one that is just like a stucco.
Hmm.
It's almost looks like the edge of a staircase or something, and it's
Hmm.
got a chip off the
Hmm.
paint.
Yeah.
Love that one. It's just, and
Thank
I'm
you.
sure that everybody in your campus knows that corner that they must go past all the
Very
time. And
possibly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and then the other one is that it's a toaster oven or something
Well,
in the staff
it's
room.
the thing that was great about Kathy Ryan's project is she took pictures of just normal things, of day to day
Hmm.
things. And you're right. It's in the teacher mailbox room, and it was a toaster oven, like one of those, what do they call them? Convection or I don't know, the toaster oven thing, and then a little actual toaster right next to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I'm looking for, it was black and white because they were silver, and so the contrast worked really well. So you turn it into black and white with a flip of your thumb on your
Yeah.
phone. It's
It's a
ridiculous.
great shot. And
Oh,
it's
thank you.
also like, again, I'm sure every teacher in that building knows
Yeah,
those two machines very
they
well
do
and
know
is
those
like,
two
yep,
machines
a
for
lot of us
sure.
have used these, and
Yeah,
it's these little things don't get any attention, and there's a lot
right.
of beauty in just giving them their moment, really.
I totally agree with that. And it's funny. This is the magic thing for anybody listening about any creative thing you're doing. I thought those would be two of the most mundane, uninteresting
Mm,
photos that I was just practicing.
yeah.
And that they stood out to you just says that you never know. You never know
Yeah,
what's going to resonate with people.
absolutely. And you've also just doing this, you've sort of discovered like, oh, I'm actually kind of good at this, which is also another kind of nice side benefit.
I'll admit to that a little bit. I mean, it's just that it's like you said, sometimes people have maybe a little eye for photography, composition, and it's just learning. And it's funny, on my Instagram I say in the bio, teacher, writer, photographer, and for the teacher I put a stack of books, and for the writer I put a little fountain pen, but for the photographer I put an eye, not a camera, because photography
Oh,
is about seeing. Who
yeah.
cares what gear you have? Obviously, I've proven that I have a silly phone, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's about seeing. It's about how you look at the world. And you don't have to be great, especially with these phones. But
Mm,
if you start to know what to look for and how to see, you automatically get better. And I think that's kind of what happened to me a little
yeah. I love that.
bit.
So let's talk about what it did for your staff, because this was another unexpected. And these are things you just started to hear from people.
Yes, absolutely. Um, our librarian was the first one to tell me, and she's just an amazing person and so supportive of every creative endeavor I have. And she was one of the, because I trust her so much, she was one of the first people I asked, can I take your portrait? I'm doing this new project. She said, yes, absolutely. I think we took it right then. It was
Mm,
crazy. But she said, after it had been going on for a while, she said, I really think this is bringing our staff together and unifying them. And on Friday, a couple days ago, we're recording on Sunday. Another teacher came up to me who's also been there at least 25 years. We probably started about the
yeah.
same time. And he said, this portrait project that you're doing has brought us together and connected us in ways even much more than all of the intentional orchestrated icebreakers and team building
Yeah.
exercises, which, I mean, they have great intentions and of course they're
Hmm.
helpful, but it's the sort of grassroots, unexpected connectors that really bring a staff together. And I'm just, flattered as all get out that anything that I did, elevated the teachers, in what they do, because they should be showcased. They should
Yeah.
be elevated. Teachers are my heroes. They just do amazing things.
Absolutely. And we spend so much time in our own classrooms.
Yes,
Just there's and are so tired at the end of the day that there really isn't time to just stop and look at each other and get to know each
absolutely.
other, especially if we work across the building. And
Hmm.
I interviewed a teacher, she might have been episode 2 of my podcast
Oh,
about
wow.
why she left the profession, because I was trying
Hmm.
to like dig into like new teachers and why they just give up super easy.
Right,
And the thing she said was, I feel like if the administrator had done more to help me get to know the other teachers and feel like I was part of
right.
the family. She said I just kind of felt isolated and I didn't have that support. And so things like this, you never would think that and so I think that's why I want to really put a light on this, because
Thank you.
I'm hoping people are going to take this on at their own schools.
That would be amazing. And anybody can do it. That's one thing I really want to emphasize. But yeah, you're right. The isolation is really difficult with teachers. And at our school, one thing that you would think would be really convenient, and it is that all of our buildings are set up by subject area. So there's a math building and an English building and a science building. But with a 30-minute lunch, like you're saying, you don't get any intermingling. And this is just human nature. In a staff meeting, the science department sits together, the English department sits together,
Right.
But this has been really cool because then you see other people being people, not just teachers, which was another benefit. Is teachers have this persona that we have to put on of being the professional and not keeping our guard up and not being too kind of unguarded for our students or too quote unquote human, but this project has really shown them just being people, which was wonderful. But they don't often get that. And so one teacher who's kind of new to our school in our English department that works with me said, I didn't know who anybody was, but now that I follow your Instagram, because I just put their first name and their department to try to keep a little bit of their privacy. But I do, I have permission for all of them to post. But she said, now I know who they are and I know what they do. And so I didn't even think of that, but that's huge.
Yeah. Whenever I would start a new job, I would always ask for last year's yearbook just so that I could kind of try to figure out who these people are that I'm working with.
That's genius.
So I love that. And now what has now happened is that your art teacher has asked you if you would do a gallery show of all
Isn't
of
it crazy?
Yeah. You think it is, but it's not. And you had originally told me last week that you were like, no.
Yeah.
I don't want, and you were being very humble. And I would like to say that I had a little bit of a role in pushing you over saying yes, because it's actually, you're letting these teachers have their moment in this gallery. And so it is definitely about congratulating you on the work you did, but it's also really about them.
I think that's the reason I would even consider it.
Yeah.
Is, I didn't want them to feel uncomfortable. Like if I had my picture up in an art gallery exhibition, that would just be super weird to me. But you're right. They need to be celebrated. They need to be elevated. They need to be showcased. So, if we can put it together, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to that, but we do an annual student art show, and he puts up display boards and all of the student art, and so it just would be a matter of kind of taking that down and putting up the portraits for a week or whatever it would be. Maybe a page that I've written about what we're talking about here, where it came from, and that kind of thing. And that'd be kind of fun, and people could go in and like you said, see each other and see themselves as people and as works of art, which I think is amazing.
You know what? You could even put a QR code linked to this episode, so they
can. That would
listen
be fantastic.
To you talk about it
I would
too,
absolutely do that.
It'll be done by then. So
good, excellent.
That would be really neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you added to the end of the blog post that you wrote about this was sort of turning it around now, because what we're really hoping is that this might start a trend for other teachers out there who might want to do something similar. So you've offered some steps that somebody could take if they wanted lots of us have iPhones, if they wanted to take this on, what are these 7 steps that you're offering? Can you let us know what those are?
Oh my gosh, I don't have them in front of me, but I can kind of summarize for you.
Okay, I can tell you. I'll lead you into each one. How about that?
And then I'll just say something about them.
So the first one has to do with using portrait mode on their phone and having the subject stand. And this was an important one.
Yes.
You've got a backdrop, but you don't want them to stand against the backdrop. You want them to stand a few feet away from the backdrop. Yes. Why is that?
Well, I've learned that you need a little distance between your subject and the backdrop to get that lovely, blurry, like dreamy background. I think it's pronounced bokeh. I've only ever read it because I'm self-trained. I've never heard it, but I think it's called bokeh. It's just that dreamy background that you see in beautiful portraits. And again, like we're talking about iPhones, but I know that Androids have them too. Anybody who has a phone has the portrait mode, and it's a game changer because it really makes you look like you know what you're doing.
And we should add that we did put in the link in the post a link to the actual, you took a course, a
Yes.
online course for iPhone photography. And so we went
Yes.
ahead and linked people to that if they want to know where did you
Awesome.
actually learn this
Yeah.
stuff.
Which is proof that
Um,
Instagram ads work, y'all. You know?
they do.
Yeah. It just came up one day and I was like, oh, that looks interesting.
So the second step that you are offering is the one that we've already talked about, which is to not just say smile, but to
Yes.
say, give me a smile like you have a secret.
Hmm.
The other one you have here is put your hand on your chin like you're thinking about what to have for dinner, which I'm guessing made
Right.
people kind of chuckle a little bit. And
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, that's the
Um,
thing. You're trying to put them at ease and get them to have fun, but also get them thinking, well, what kind of pose do I want? Or
mhm.
what am I feeling? Or what am I thinking about? Because that will change their body language, their facial expression, all of that.
Yeah. The third one is simplicity is key. You're
Hmm.
just talking about you don't have to overcomplicate the
Nope.
setup there.
I tell my English students on their writing, simple and clear is better than fancy and unclear.
Oh
And the same
gosh,
thing
right.
is true for this.
Okay. So you don't have to overthink the
No.
setup for this. Number 4 though, you say have a concept
Hmm.
that you asked one teacher. Oh, this is interesting. I'm
Hmm.
just going to read to you what you wrote.
Sure.
I asked one teacher who I thought of as particularly thoughtful to recreate the iconic Steve Jobs photo where his hand is on his chin and his thumb is slightly raised. So would this be something you would suggest or you would let them come up with it?
No, I got a lot of inspiration from Instagram photographers that I would follow, and on my
Mm.
phone, I have something like 4,000 pictures on my phone now, which is crazy. But I would screenshot the photos from these photographers, show my subject, and go, no, like
Mm.
this. This is what I'm
Oh,
looking for.
okay.
Yeah, and then again with this one particular teacher, who I think of as very thoughtful and very wise, that picture of Steve Jobs, which I think we all know, came to
Mhm.
mind. And I said, "Hey, Pete, can we do this?" And we took other
Yeah.
pictures too. But when he did that, I mean, it just turned out beautifully.
Yeah.
It just looked really cool. And then, on one Facebook post that I did when I was just showing people what I was doing, I put them side by side, and it looked really cool.
Nice. So for somebody who really wants to do this, if they have inspiration photos where they've
Yes,
got the subject is doing something in particular,
right.
hang on to those and maybe show them to people.
Yeah, there's one
Yeah.
English teacher who has just a great sense of style, and she's young and she's got really long hair, and I thought fashion model, and
Mm.
so I found this sort of Vogue
Mhm.
picture of this model, and I showed her and I said, can we do this? And it just turned out really excellent. Just was like, and it was fun for her to do because I'm assuming she doesn't get to do that kind of thing a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
That
it
was
was fun.
actually number 5. You've
Oh,
got use inspirations from photographers
yes.
online and social media. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and then number 6 says work with your impression of your
Hmm.
subject, but also work against your impression of the subject. What does that mean?
Well, one example would be the one I just gave is we would never think of a teacher as kind of a fashion model. So
Yeah.
having them behave like a fashion model is kind of working against type. It's
Right.
working against the stereotype. The example I gave in the post is, we have our football coach who just kind of a fun fact was my student the first year I was there because that's what
Mhm.
happens, if
Mhm.
you're there long enough. And again, we go back so far that he just trusted me, and we get along really well. And so I took a few portraits of him with the football and doing kind of coachy things. But then I thought, how fun would it be if I also caught kind of a sensitive, vulnerable side and worked against that stereotype of the athletic, masculine, kind of tough guy,
Yeah.
jock kind of, type. And I found this picture of the actor Kevin Kline, who again, people of a certain age will remember.
Mhm.
And he was looking very sort of vulnerable, and he had his chin down on his hands. And I asked this football coach if he might try that. Well, of course he did it, and it looks really cool. But he's got these ginormous arms with these muscles. Hard to
Yeah.
hard to not accentuate those. But I just thought it looked really cool, and it was just a different look for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh,
he ended up really liking that shot a lot. So that meant a lot to me.
I cannot imagine that every single one of these people is not getting these photos like framed in their houses somewhere, because how often do you get a chance to have something
Yeah.
like that done
It's
for
been
you?
so fun. It's been so fun
Yeah.
to do this for them and give them that ability to see themselves in a different light.
Mm. And that actually does lead us to your seventh
Oh,
tip, which is have fun. If you're
yes.
having fun, then your subjects will
Yeah.
have fun, which is
Oh,
a
yeah.
really nicely, yeah.
You got to have fun.
Yeah. So where can people find, are you going to keep the Instagram account up
I'm going to
of
keep
the
it up, but
photos?
I've stopped
Okay.
officially posting. What I'm
Okay.
doing now, and I don't think this will include portraits, but if I'm, I'm still looking for shots at school. So
Mm-hmm.
when I get there, if I take a shot that I think is really good, I'll just pop it in the story.
Okay. And what is the handle for that account?
It's called Wolfpack Pix, Pix, because all the other ones
Okay.
were taken. But
Okay.
because our mascot is the Wolfpack.
Okay. And where can people find, where's the best place for people to go to find you online?
I would say, first of all, just my website, thezenteacher.com.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can sign up for my email list there. I used to be on Twitter, but that's a whole different kind of, it's a whole different portrait of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then on Instagram, just Zen Teacher. If you like the photography stuff, I have a photography Instagram called Finding Dan Tricarico, which again, I just thought was going to be for me, but then people find it. But that was named after, there was a street photographer named Vivian Meyer. And there was a documentary about her called Finding Vivian Meyer. So I just loved that documentary. So I just called it Finding Dan Tricarico.
All right. We're going to link to all of this in the post. And you have written a post sort of outlining this whole story for us there too.
Yes, and that was super fun too. So thank you.
Yeah. So Dan, thank you so much. This has been really neat.
I appreciate it. It was a thrill to be here.
To view the entire gallery of photos and read Dan's post about the project, visit cultofpedagogy.com, click podcast, and choose episode 221. To get a bi-monthly email from me about my newest blog posts, podcast episodes, courses, and products, sign up for my mailing list at cultofpedagogy.com/subscribe. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.